Welcome everybody. Excuse me. Our topic today is best practice in growing culinary and agritourism at the destination level. And here today to talk to us about this is Valerie. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to see everyone in the room today. And yes, I have prepared a presentation, but I promise I'll keep it short. My goal here is to share a little bit about what we do on the day-to-day to develop culinary tourism at the destination level. And what I'm hoping to do after this is, have the chance to have a bit of a discussion with you all about reflections on what I present, your approaches to this, and I'm glad to see so many people in the room who are connected to this, and especially Jamie and Nikki. Nice to see you on the call today. They are with Peterborough and the Kawarthas, and they are in fact one of the case studies I will be presenting today. So without further ado, I will get started. So yes, my name is Valerie O'Halloran. I'm the Director of Business Development at the Culinary Tourism Alliance. And if you're not familiar with us yet, we are a not-for-profit dedicated to bridging the gap between the food and drink and travel industries. And our vision is to ensure that food tourism is a meaningful and sustainable contributor to local economies and destinations worldwide. We work with communities to grow food tourism by leveraging the history, the heritage, and the culture behind the food and drink that make each destination unique. And I truly believe every destination is unique and has these assets to leverage. So I'd like to thank the GMIST team for inviting me here today to share some lessons from some recent projects that we have completed here in Ontario, specifically related to agritourism, and share some of the insights that we've learned about our approach to helping ensure that food tourism development can be a sustainable one and create sustainable economies. So I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that I live and work on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. I honor all my relations and am committed to working with Indigenous peoples to grow tourism in Canada and beyond. So please take a moment with me to reflect on the traditional lands where you reside and acknowledge the extraordinary value Indigenous people across North America are having on the tourism industry and for all their contributions. Okay, so as you probably all already know, culinary and agritourism development happens at several different levels and with a variety of different stakeholders. It truly takes a village. So just as we know that there's no one definition for agritourism, we also know that there's no one way to go about developing agritourism or culinary tourism, but that it generally involves work at the grassroots level. So in this presentation, I'll share and compare and contrast two different case studies from recent projects, agritourism development projects specifically that we've supported in rural Ontario, to highlight the approach that each destination used and share some key learnings and successes from the projects. And in the end, I hope that these thoughts about real life case studies, how best practices in agritourism development can be adapted to each unique situation, can offer you a bit of inspiration on how you might approach it in your destination. I won't be monitoring the chat, but I believe we will be monitoring the chat. So if you've got questions, please feel free to add them during the presentation there. But like I mentioned, won't be too long. I'm hoping we're having a good discussion after the fact, so you can also ask them at the end. So I'll cover a few basic concepts before I jump into the actual case studies about our understanding on culinary and agritourism development. Agritourism as a concept must be regionally defined in order for it to meet the needs of locals and the expectations of visitors. And why do I say this? Well, food is often a cultural experience and a community experience as well. So it brings people together in really, really beautiful ways. And that's why when we talk about defining food tourism, we say that food tourism is any travel experience where a person learns about and consumes food and or drink that reflects the history, heritage, and culture of a place. So I'll let that sink in for a moment. It's about much more than just restaurants. And that's why when we're exploring agritourism or food tourism as a concept, we say that agritourism is a subset of food tourism that focuses on the production side of food and drink by showcasing the unique processes, people, and places involved. So one thing that we know is that demand for agritourism is growing, which presents an opportunity for destinations to work with a broader set of food tourism stakeholders towards creating meaningful visitor experiences. So what makes food and drink experiences meaningful? Well, of course, any presentation on food tourism must talk about foodways. Food and drink experiences are meaningful by their connection to local foodways. Foodways address the who, what, when, where, and why, and how food becomes part of the fabric of a community. They shed light on the physical, social, cultural, economic, and spiritual factors that inform their experience of food. And so when foodways are the foundation for food and agritourism development, food and drink products and experiences have a lot more integrity, and these tourism experiences can become manifestations of local culture and traditions. Food and drink is often regional, with dishes innately tied to local heritage, culture, and landscape. So you could think of tacos in Mexico, cheese in Vermont, seafood in the Maritimes, and butter tarts in Ontario. These are more than just ingredients that go into them, right? They are manifestations of regional ways of producing food. So all of these aspects lead back to the people of the place, how their culture has evolved, and how they've shaped the landscape, their traditions, their livelihoods. All of these things, the relationship between them is what we mean by the term foodways. So this concept is really central when we think about agritourism development, since local farmers, ranchers, producers, fishers, foragers, knowledge keepers, and artisans are the ones shaping these landscapes and upholding rural economies and preserving traditional knowledge about the land. So another foundational concept I want to cover today is the culinary tourism value chain and where growers and producers fit into the broader food tourism landscape. This diagram, which we often use, coined the culinary tourism value chain. If you're familiar with the concept of a value chain already, then you know that they are designed basically to increase the competitive advantage of a group of businesses working in collaboration to deliver a combined value that is higher or beyond an individual business's capacity to do so. So this interdependence basically allows operators to focus on what they do best while benefiting from the increased efficiency and effectiveness of working as a collective. We often like to reframe it when you're thinking about tourism and attracting visitors, it's more about co-opetition with other businesses in your region because you're cooperating to attract visitors to your destination. So all in all, the visitor experience is really enriched with each layer or type of business that they interact with while exploring the destination. So what does agritourism development look like at the destination level? Where do we even start with this topic? And what are the key factors that practitioners should work into their projects? Well, I'd like to offer this illustration as a concept map that's going to help ground some of the learnings from my two case studies here. If you want to amplify your destination's taste of place through agritourism, you can't do it alone. That we know. It takes more than just one or two farmers to make a destination known for its food and drink. And so, yes, tourism is a different type of business to agriculture, and it can be a competitive one. But rising tides float all boats. So we'd like to see friendly cooperation and see clusters of different types of agritourism businesses working together to develop the destination. So to get to this enabling environment, which starts with first engaged stakeholders that are aligned with their goals and objectives for the region. This is the first bubble you see at the top here in the center, fostering high stakeholder engagement. You see they're aligned with common goals and objectives for the region. Next thing that you need is an enabling policy environment, one that perhaps has a common definition. For agritourism, this is important because agritourism policy often relates to the definition that's used for on-farm diversified uses, for example. Forging partnerships between government, so this involves planners, tourism offices, industry, which might be sector organizations, farmers, food service providers, and tourism operators for collaborative investment in strategic infrastructure, marketing, and capacity building. So it's really important that everybody's sort of on the same page and working together strategically. This is what leads to collaborative investments. The investments are often into building individual capacity for the tourism and hospitality related skills. So this might be multi-sensory experience development, it might be customer service, it might be marketing, it might be infrastructure projects. And in the end, you can see what brings us back to the full circle is that concept of the value chain. All these investments and these alignments help strengthen that value chain, which is the foundation for what builds excellent experiences for visitors. All right, so we've covered some of the foundations here, and I'm going to start with the first of our case studies. But before I do, I want to provide a little bit of context. I'm sure you all already know this. This is true for most provinces in Canada. But our two case studies here are in Ontario, and Ontario has been and continues to be an agricultural powerhouse. We've got a rich history, but nonetheless, we've been affected like everyone else with some of these macro trends around agriculture, modernization of our practices, scaling up of farms. This has particularly affected small and medium-sized farms, which are in the decline. At the same time, though, we are seeing increased demand for agritourism experiences locally, and thus it presents an opportunity for those small and medium-sized farms to diversify their revenue through tourism. And that's where we land today with this discussion. It's also important to remind ourselves that agriculture in Canada is regulated at two different levels, federally and provincially. And so land use is often defined provincially. However, it's the local municipalities that govern the on-farm diversified uses through their official plans and bylaws. So agritourism development is encouraged at the provincial level, but development work often happens for these reasons at the regional or grassroots level. And so situated in two different corners of the province, we'll showcase the approach that two different destinations took in developing agritourism. The first is, of course, Peterborough and the Kawarthas tourism. We did this project, or we worked on this project in 2018 to 2019 with Peterborough and the Kawarthas tourism, which is a division of Peterborough and the Kawarthas economic development. And so they have been focused on bringing agriculture and tourism together for promotional and marketing initiatives to expand their economic impact. And they had been recognized nationally already for some of their culinary and agritourism promotional efforts. However, they still had the question of how to create lasting and meaningful connections between these two industries, which is always a bit of a challenge. And so because of this, they recognized the need to better understand how they could utilize these best practices in sustainable agritourism development, and they wanted to create a plan. So they engaged the CTA to support them in exploring growth opportunities for agritourism. The project goals at the time were to increase their understanding of the benefits of agritourism to build international and stakeholder capacity. The second one was to inform their decision-making around product development. And the third was to guide their direction of agritourism development to ensure that the region benefits from it. So to achieve this, here's our roadmap. First, we analyzed leading best practices in research in the field through a literature review, and then by attending the first World Congress on Agritourism in Bologna, Italy. We led a capacity building workshops to co-create a local definition for agritourism, very important step. We conducted stakeholder engagement and market research, including a SWOT analysis, a comparator analysis, and a need gap analysis, as well as reviewed local and provincial policy and did a regulation summary. Finally, we produced a localized agritourism concept map, which I'll show you in a moment, and a final report which serves as a development resource, as well as had some quick links related to funding in there. So the impact of the projects are still being felt today. I know because we reconnected in this past year to hear about it, and it's having an impact across all the planning that they do for tourism, since it's at the top of their minds on other types of economic development and strategy projects. They have a clear understanding of how agritourism is intersecting across all aspects of the region, their community, and their industries. So it's a lot easier to keep top of mind and integrate into some of their plans. So this is the wonderful localized concept map that they developed through consultations and co-creation sessions. If you'd like to hear the definition of agritourism that they landed on, was diverse experiences that connect locals and visitors alike to where their food comes from, whether directly through an activity that happens at the place of production or indirectly by engaging with people behind it. So this concept map shows the regional environment that conceptualizes agritourism through the people that bring agritourism to life. And if you're a visual person like me, it really helps bring that definition to life. So some observations and key learnings from this one. Agritourism in Peterborough and the Kawarthas was described as still emerging, which is exciting. There was relatively little, they found that there was relatively little experience and few companies providing market-ready and on-farm diversified, leveraging on-farm diversified uses. Agritourism primarily existed as a curiosity still at the time of this project and a conversation. The research found that it was a bit inconsistent, or there was a lack of understanding for the potential impacts of food and agritourism on agricultural businesses. And there was a bit of confusion around rules and regulations surrounding agritourism enterprise development, which is, you know, for every project we worked on about agritourism, this is true in any destination, which is why it's always helpful to review the policies and find ways to increase understanding for them. So we also conducted an industry survey, which reaffirmed support for agritourism and listed many of the opportunities. This was really important because even if it was considered emerging or there were still some questions about what this was, there's definitely a strong sense of support for developing agritourism and a willingness. So, you know, we saw a strong and involved agricultural and food community, which was awesome. New and younger populations looking for opportunities in the rural sector. We found there was a need to diversify those on-farm activities and look past traditional farming for sources of revenue. And that interactions between farmers and visitors can better inform on-farm and rural life. That's one of the opportunities we saw. On the flip side, we also noticed that there were some real, but also some perceived challenges that the region could help address. First was perception that tourism brings few benefits to rural residents or communities. The second was that there were constraints, again, real or perceived, to farm diversification by zoning bylaws. There was perceived disruption or corruption of agriculture or rural lifestyles and the landscape. That's an interesting point to think about. There were concerns about biosecurity of animals and guests on farms that are open to the public. That's true. These are working farms. And coordinating regional cooperation in the marketing and promotion of agritourism. That's always a challenge, but not one that's insurmountable. So basically, the report included a summary of the policy context at several different levels of government, including government programs that can help provide funding support for new product development and investment. And the learnings from this project were then later incorporated into a regional culinary tourism strategy and a sustainable destination development strategy. So they were rolled into the broader strategy, which is nice to see. So our second case study is about the town of Essex. So they are also dedicated to support and promote tourism, agriculture, and economic development initiatives. And they were seeking to support and to develop a specific agritourism strategy that would help unlock the potential for existing and potential new investors in agritourism businesses and experiences. So the goal for this project was basically to develop an agritourism strategy for the town of Essex, which prioritizes short and medium-term actions for the next 2 to 3 years and demonstrate a clear understanding of industry needs, and is co-produced, and that was co-produced by stakeholders by the end of March 2021. So you can see with this project that it was similar, but that at the onset, the goals were very specific in the types of outcomes they wanted to see, a little bit less exploratory in that way. So this is what the project roadmap looked for this one. You can see that this project took a similar approach than we did, but in that we did quite a bit of market research and stakeholder engagement. We also did an asset inventory and surveyed the municipal council. So all of this helped raise awareness and understanding for the potential of agritourism development, the definition that they use in the region, and resulted in a 3-year agritourism strategy and implementation plan. This strategy implementation began almost immediately as a result, with a bit further research on an understanding into the rules and regulations. We helped with a support program, which involved workshops for farmers and dedicated one-on-one coaching on experience development. Right away, they invested in collecting photo assets of these different market-ready businesses, which benefited both the region and their marketing, but also they shared these assets with the businesses, which helped improve their own marketing. And most recently, in this past year, we worked with the town of Essex to develop an agritourism development toolkit, which was customized specifically to the needs and challenges of that region, as well as develop, this is very exciting, it's in the process of being launched, an agritourism ambassador program. And here's what the strategy looked like in a nutshell. You can see it's very simple, straightforward in that framework. It's available publicly online, so I'm not showing anything confidential here. Basically, in the province of Ontario and the town of Essex, agritourism means, or the definition that they use is those farm-related tourism uses that promote the enjoyment, education, and activities related to a farm operation. So the town took an accelerated and practical approach to developing agritourism, as you can see. The immediate, so this would be 0 to 12 months, and short-term actions, so 1 to 2 years, focused on growing agritourism as a priority, and strengthening agritourism networks, enhancing the agritourism offer and attracting visitors. So, key observations and learning. We also, oh, sorry, here you go. That's what I was just talking about. It also found that, future planning, so that's the medium-term actions focused on capacity building and inspirational activities to help diversify and augment agritourism experiences. The medium-term actions also focused on positioning the town as an agritourism destination through marketing. And then finally, revisiting the current definition to see if it still makes sense, if it is really creating some barriers, and if so, how it could be modified, which is a whole process in and of itself. So proud to basically report implementation is on track, and many of these actions are already underway. So here we are at the end of my presentation and back to this diagram. As you saw with both case studies, both destinations have been successful in developing agritourism at the destination level because they took a holistic and community-based approach, which has helped create that enabling environment that I described earlier through this diagram. Each project started with engaging stakeholders to align around a specific set of goals, which facilitated the exercise of defining agritourism in their local context, which has made it possible to get a clearer review and understanding of the rules and regulations for on-farm diversified uses. In turn, this has helped industry organizations, so this is destination management organizations, destination marketing organizations, economic development officers, and planners to align and form partnerships and make those strategic and collaborative investments in the areas that need it, like infrastructure, marketing, capacity building, and product development. These investments are building capacity and strengthening their local value chain, where they're seeing more partnerships, more collaborations between businesses, and in the end, this is all helping raise awareness for their collective voices to amplify their taste of place to attract more culinary tourists. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Valerie. That was really good information there. We'll open the floor now to anybody who has any questions or anything they'd like to ask.
Yeah, and I'll stop sharing my screen for this and invite you all to turn your cameras back on if you're still with me.
Yeah, so if we have any questions for Valerie, you can just unmute and ask away.
Well, I can perhaps put Jamie and Nikki on the spot. It's the first time you're seeing the presentation about your own destination. How'd I do? Did I do it justice? Do you have some new updates to share with us?
I thought it was great, Valerie. Thank you so much. I took a few screenshots to share with the team in real time here, so that's pretty exciting. It's just great to be a part of this, and we have a great relationship with the CTA. We're actually working right now on a project. We're going to be hosting Feast on the Farm, a taste of Peterborough and La Kawarthas at the end of May. So the relationship continues to get stronger. Agritourism is constantly in our mind, and culinary is the main focus for us. So I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions, what's kind of going on over on the East Coast there, and maybe share some stories.
Thanks, Jamie. Yes, you guys are great partners, and it's because you guys are really invested in developing culinary tourism. So any way we can continue to support, we're happy to.
And Valerie, you have a really exciting summit coming up.
That is true. Yes, I will tell everybody about that in a moment. I think Marika, you've got your hand up. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, yeah, you got it right. Thanks. It's Marita. Yeah, I just wondered, also being in that small farm category that you mentioned in your presentation, and currently we have a cabin set up. It's set as an eco cabin, so we have like an incinerating toilet, and it's an accommodation venue. But I am registered for the next round of the GMIST, like the training in April. And so I'm looking to develop a culinary experience. So obviously
Wonderful.
apples are what comes to mind as the cabin is in a spray-free orchard. But I'm also looking for something culinary, like it's small, right? Like it's just a cabin. So the most I'm ever getting for guests would be 4 people. So I'm looking for something that's very replicable, promotes local agriculture, and is also like a really good match for effort. Like, for example, one of the ideas that I personally have is we have a local bakery that bakes using organic flours and has our apples, and they've made lovely apple pies. And obviously pies can freeze, so that makes it a little easier, if you're going to include that culinary experience. Anyway, I just would love to hear from you about things that you have seen in other parts of Canada or beyond that have worked well.
Oh, wow. Well, that's exciting, first of all, that you are entering into this, world and starting to think of some new experiences that you can add on to your accommodation offer. People are often looking for something to do while they're staying in a rural area, or, even if where they're staying, to have that, you can offer them a taste of it and sell them a pie. There'll be a pie in your freezer when you arrive, type of thing. Things that have worked really well. Well, what I would say first, if it works for you and it's profitable and you can do it consistently, then that's the most important thing on where to start and that it works well. It's got to make sense for your business and where you like to go with that. And then I can also point to a regional project that we've got here. It's called the Apple Pie Trail. It's been around for a few years. And I know that we were just with that group a few weeks ago doing an in-person workshop to talk about new initiatives they can be doing this year to work together. So I'll find the link in the chat there. And I see my colleague Ian has his hand up, and he's always got really good ideas. So take it away, Ian.
Thanks, Valerie. Yeah, Marika, I was just going to say, you're definitely on the right track with, trying to find other local foods to bring in. Since you're doing an overnight stay, the first thing I would say, like, and I've seen this done before, is if you have like a local coffee roaster around who you can bring in their coffee. Like, to me, that's always, especially because I'm a coffee drinker, as you can tell by my like giant cup right now. I always love it when I get to an Airbnb or just like an overnight stay, and then, I see that there's some local coffee there in the morning that I can try. That'd be where I'd start. But yeah, the idea, just sort of what Valerie was talking about in the presentation too, just partnering with other businesses in the area and bringing in other local foods and creating that sort of sense of cooperation. That's definitely the best thing to do.
Yeah, that sense of cooperation and storytelling, right? Any business partnership or collaboration that you have is the basis for a really great story that you can tell about, how you guys work together, who they are, and that sense of community and place that people are looking to connect with when they're visiting a destination.
And then as a guest, I feel like I would want to go visit those places, like, to carry on. And, if it's cheese basket or something like that you have, I would want to go and find them and, spend a day on their farm too, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, like the farming, I think there's a lot of appeal in the agriculture sector for that experience of farming. The reality is when you're a small farmer is you're not set up for, like, our apple seasons in the fall. I definitely don't want, like a lot of small farmers, they don't have the ability to open their farm gates to the tourism industry. So it needs to be curated in a way that's manageable. Like it's all about because there's just not enough of a, in agriculture, unfortunately, small farmers, organic farmers, there's not enough of a profit. Like these are mostly passion projects. So
Yeah, exactly. That's why you got to add them on parts of the year, perhaps, that make sense for you, and you are filling a gap.
well, thank you. That's very helpful. I really appreciate all your feedback.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for your question. It definitely, I mean, it illustrates exactly what we're talking about, right? So I've added the example of the apple pie trail there in the chat, and it's got a lot of experiences on it. So provide some good inspiration. I've also added the Elevating Canadian Experiences Hub. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great resource. The Tourism Industry Association of Canada commissioned this project a few years ago, and we were again happy to work on it. And it's got a series of, they were workshops at the time, but they are essentially recorded webinars on specific topics, which might help you as you're working through creating some of these things.
Valerie,
Wonderful.
so it's Nikki here. I'm just thinking of Darlene there, like the Nature's Table that GMIST put on was a really helpful way to introduce culinary into a tourism offering. I got a lot out of that experience.
Awesome. Nature's Table.
That's with Lori McCarthy. She's an amazing. I think you have her for your summit too.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that
We
might be
have
the
her.
reminder I needed.
Yes, she does programs for us with GMIST, Nature's Table.
Yes, so Lori McCarthy, amazing. We are so pleased to have her as one of our speakers at our up and coming Taste of Place Summit. And I've got to mention it to this group because I feel like this is an interesting summit to some of you. It's brand new. We used to host the Terroir Symposium. You might have heard of it. It's a little bit more focused on hospitality type businesses. The Culinary Tourism Alliance, we have just reincorporated as a national not-for-profit organization. And so we're working on projects at a national scale now. And one of these is that we've created a brand new summit called the Taste of Place Summit. And our goal here is really to fill that gap in terms of the type of events and that are on right now, to have one that focuses specific on culinary and agritourism development by bringing together those stakeholders who are involved in it, and that I mentioned in the presentation. So we want to see DMOs, ECDev officers, planners, government, academia, and also operators who are in the industry come together at this, talk about the opportunity for culinary and agritourism development in Canada. But we've also got in some international speakers and guests we're expecting to bring a bit of an international perspective. So the first one is going to be this June. Early bird tickets are on sale now, and I will drop the link in the chat. There we go. So worth mentioning, check it out. We have, I guess, 10 more minutes here, and I know you all sort of work in this space or are connected to it in some way. I'd love to just ask the room, do you know of any recent projects in your area that have been focused around developing culinary and agritourism? And perhaps could you share the approach they've taken or things you've learned about the project? Or perhaps you can also focus on what some elements are that you do to ensure that what you do is sustainable, contributing to sustainable development in this area.
Valerie, it's Tracy Singleton here. I'm wondering if you have any examples of any events that are doing a really good job on agritourism. Is there any that kind of come to mind that perhaps we could look into to see what they're doing?
Oh, you mean consumer-facing events?
Yeah, like is there festival and events that perhaps that are doing a really great job of incorporating agritourism into their experience? Is there any that you're aware of?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I can think of a number of them, and geez, I need to find the link to it. But a great example of a type of event that's linked to agritourism would be those farm to table dinners, which are really popular. They are actually pretty complicated to put on, or they don't have to be complicated to put on, but there's a lot of thought that goes into them. But anytime that you can offer sort of a farm to table dinner where you're offering local fare in an interesting setting on farm, creates opportunity to invite people to come a little bit early, have a tour of the farm, learn about some of the production practices, learn about maybe some of the ingredients that they'll see on their plate later. That's an excellent example of a type of, agritourism event that seems to be very popular and work very well. We hear of a lot of them being sold out. A recent example I can think of was at Apple Hill Farm. Again, it's here in Ontario. It's a local example. And I will try and find the link to the event page. But then again, another example that we are working to develop with the same concept that involves some educational programming and is being put on in partnership with destination marketing organization partners is our Feast on the Farm series that Jamie mentioned before. It's basically in concept, it's a 2-day event that usually straddles a Sunday and a Monday. So we're trying to encourage travel on days of the week that are usually less popular, as well as times of the year that are peak season to extend people in time and space within the season. And the idea is that there's a Consumer Day event, which is put on for consumers. It's a wonderful, locally inspired menu with local chefs on the Sunday afternoon. And then some of the proceeds from that event help fund the Industry Day, which is the following day, which has educational programming for people who work in the industry around how to incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals into their operations and into their projects. Tracy, did that answer your question?
This is Tanya with the Agricultural Festival on Eastport Peninsula, Newfoundland. We've been kind of struggling with the agricultural part of the festival. We've kind of gotten away and the focus seems to be going elsewhere. So we're trying to think of ways to bring it back to agriculture. And so I've been kind of secretly planning to just point out, even just highlight the ways that we are still doing agricultural. And when you talk about sustainability, just pointing out the things that we're already doing. There's a local group that puts off a meal, so the vegetables are all peeled, and there is a local farmer that the scraps get composted. So just trying to think about ways to highlight that we're already doing the things that we need to be, some of the things that we need to be doing, and just hoping it might get the ball rolling and get us thinking more in that direction. I didn't know if you had any comments there, but ways I could help trick everybody to get in that.
Sorry, Tanya, just to clarify, you are already welcoming people on farm in some sort of event or tour?
Well, we have food events during the festival, and food farm tours have been mentioned, but I don't know what kind of peters off, and it hasn't really happened in the past few years. So we're trying to get the focus back on agriculture in a bigger way.
Okay. Well, if you are already doing the things like you mentioned, and it's just a matter of incorporating them into the event, then I think that's where you start. Find a way to incorporate it. Sometimes it's just got to be incorporated in a way that is feasible, in terms of bringing people on site so that it's still safe and stuff like that. It doesn't last too long. You provide them with enough information, but not, too much information. I think if you're already doing the practices, it's just a matter of making a plan to incorporate it. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer. It sounds like you're on track.
Oh, that's
Can I-
good. Can I just add? Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, in Eastport, Newfoundland, you said. I didn't get your name. Nancy, maybe?
Tanya Lane.
Tanya. Sorry, Tanya. I'm from Newfoundland as well. I'm from the West Coast. And I just wrote in the comments there. I don't know if you've been in touch with Crystal Anderson-Baggs from the Department of Agriculture.
I don't think I have, but another member of the committee has been talking to somebody on the provincial level, I think.
Yeah, because she's involved with marketing, so she would be so excited to know that you're trying to get the agriculture back into your festival and to highlight the agriculture in your area. So I would highly recommend contacting her because her job with the government is to market the farms, and an agricultural festival, which I wish was happening in my area, would be such a wonderful way to do that. And may I make a little suggestion, because I think that's what you're looking for. It would be, as part of your festival, you could have like on a 2 to 4 on the Saturday or on the Sunday, where local farms in the area can open up just for those 2 hours to allow that connection with the participants and the event goers and the festival goers. And maybe that's their first step. That 1-2 hour thing might be the first step that farmer ever makes in doing an actual agritourism event or an experience, and it could inspire them to continue to do that in their regular practices once they have experienced it once as part of your festival. So perhaps reaching out to see who would like to do a farm day type activity during the festival might be a way to bring the agriculture back out in your festival. So I don't know if that helps, but I just wanted to share my thought with you while you were asking that question.
Yeah, we've been discussing things like that, and the farmers around are kind of like less enthusiastic about being involved. So it's also yeah, trying to figure out.
And you
Go
got to
ahead.
really understand the farmer's perspective there. I run a small farm. My farm's a lot different than many farms, but I can understand. I've worked in farms my life, and my husband as well. And you got to and it's hard. And you got to understand. You got to understand their perspective. All it takes is somebody to snap a picture of something they see in the background, and all of a sudden, their reputation online can be destroyed with somebody making a false claim so instantly by just misunderstanding something that they took a picture of. So I can understand why farmers are hesitant to welcome people to their farm. So that's another viewpoint we got to take into consideration when we talk about agritourism.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're talking about. Like it's hard to pull the farmers
It's
in.
a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same in my area.
Excellent example, Laura Lee. Thank you very much. I think you perfectly illustrated why sometimes it's a challenge. Mhm. Wonderful. If there are any other questions, please feel free. I'll stick around. If not, I guess thank you very much for joining us for the presentation today and the talk. I hope you're walking away with a few new insights or perspectives on how to think about this. I hope it leads to some interesting initiatives or projects in your area. If you've got any questions, my email, I will pop it again in the chat here. Feel free to get in touch.
And thank you, Valerie. Just want to remind everyone, if you could just take a few seconds to do the survey at the very end, and check out GMIST.ca, because there is all kinds of culinary programs that we do offer. And in the fall now, we will probably be offering, or we will be offering another a culinary one that might interest you. So just keep checking out GMIST.ca for different programs. And thank you all so much for joining us today. Bye, everyone.